friends, and welcome to another episode of the Woldenburn Podcast. My name is Emily, and I am just so glad that you are joining me today. I am coming to you from Tennessee, where I live with my husband and our little baby boy. First off, elephant in the room, yes, I got a haircut. I got a haircut a couple of days ago. It's a little bit shorter than I was anticipating, but it'll grow out pretty quickly, I think. I kind of would have preferred it like just an inch, half an inch longer, but I'm making it work. And I've pin curled it, so it's looking all cute and curly and bouncy, so I'm getting used to it. It's taking a little bit of adjustment just because I've had longer hair, like it was down here. I've had longer hair for quite some time, but anyway, I just wanted to get that off the bat. I actually filmed this podcast episode yesterday, but I was just kind of tired and honestly just not feeling it. So I thought I'd go ahead and refilm it again this morning. My husband's got the baby, so you might hear fussing in the background. Baby Tam has ended up being a little bit on the fussier side for babies, which makes it a little more difficult to get things done, but it's all worth it because he's cute. It is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode today just because, again, I don't have anything but a little bit of knitting to show you. Well, I have a decent amount of knitting. It's a decent amount to have gotten done, especially with a fussy baby. But I do not have any sort of sewing or any other type of crafting, but I thought that it might be fun to also talk about some knitting podcasts that I've really been enjoying, and potentially talking about a few knitting patterns that I would like to knit up in the near future. To be honest, I don't know how much knitting I'll be able to get done, just because, like I said, with baby being a little bit fussier, it's definitely made it more difficult to get in any knitting time, but I'm kind of hoping that as he gets a little bit older and he kind of starts figuring out his napping schedule, I'll be able to do a little bit more. But yes, let's just go ahead and dive right into the knitting content. So first off, technically I have a half-finished object. I believe the last time that I filmed an episode, I showed you this one. All that I had left was to just Kitchener the toe off, and I have done that. So now I have a finished sock. And this is just a shorty sock. I used the Hermione's Everyday Sock pattern, which has this lovely texture on it. And it's a pattern designed by Erica Luder, and it's a free pattern on Ravelry. It has this beautiful Eye of the Partridge heel. It's blowing out a little bit. Let me see if I can fix this. There we go. Anyway, I knit this out of the Drops Fable, I believe it is. Now I'm second guessing myself. Yes, it's Drops Fable in the colorway 162, which I believe is like Blue Sea or something. I purchased this off of Etsy from a seller on there. I believe it was Sun Yarn Studio, and I bought a bunch of balls of Drops Fable, and so far I'm really loving it. It was just it's a lovely sock yarn to work with. Now it's a little dark. It can't decide what it wants to do. It's a little bit overcast outside today, so it's probably clouds coming through. Anyway, so a half-finished object. I have technically cast on the second sock, but I have done absolutely nothing since I cast it on. But half the battle of making sure that you don't have second sock syndrome is getting that second sock cast on, which I have done. So once I have a little bit more knitting time and I can work on some other projects, it'll already be all ready for me. So that's project number 1. And then project number 2. These next 2 projects I had not cast on at the time of my last podcast recording. I can't remember if I talked about both of them in that one. I know I talked about this one. So let me see here. I am in the process of knitting a Oslo hat, which is a pattern designed by Petite Knit. And right now it does not look like much of a hat because with this pattern, it is a paid for pattern, so I'm not going to give too many details away. But you start off with knitting absolutely miles of stockinette stitch, and so I think I've still got a few inches to go of stockinette stitch. But the brilliant thing is that motorcycle. The brilliant thing is that with this, it's so mindless, especially at the beginning. It's just knitting in the round, and it's really enjoyable. And I'm knitting this on 3mm needles, which I believe might be a size down from what's called for in the pattern, but I can't remember for sure. Anyway, so here's what it's looking like. I am in love with how this yarn turned out. So this is actually some of my hand-dyed yarn. I took forever to cast it on because I couldn't figure out what color of yarn I wanted to use. And so I was just kind of going back and forth trying to figure out what color to dye. And I'm so happy with this. I actually, it started as this, which is a very bright aqua. It's blowing out a little bit on the screen. Like, this is a bit more true to life. If I hold it up here, I think it's a little bit brighter. But it's just this lovely, like, tonal aqua teal blue. And I love this color, but this hat is a gift for my dad. And I knew that that was way too bright of a blue for him. So I over-dyed it with, like, some black and some gray and some darker blues, which has resulted in this gorgeous navy with all these, like, tonal, like, it's got little pops of lighter color, and it's just, I love it. I love it so much. It turned out so absolutely perfect. Here it is in the skein. I love it. I would 100% love to have a sweater in this color, but I don't think I wrote down what I overdyed it with, so I haven't worked on this one in a bit. I was able to work on it a decent amount when we went on a trip a couple weekends ago, and we had a really long drive. We drove up to Wisconsin for a wedding, and so I was able to work on it a little bit when I wasn't sleeping, because it was a long drive. And so yeah, like I said, it's just stockinette stitch, so it's super mindless. It's like the most mindless knit ever. That's project number one, and I am knitting this on it's a fingering weight yarn held double, which is what's called for in the pattern, and I am just using the same cake, one from the center, one strand from the outside, and that's usually how I end up doing it when I hold fingering weight double. It just works the best for me. And I honestly, I love holding fingering weight yarn double. It gives it such a different texture, a different feel from just a DK weight yarn, and it's just so nice. So I'm hoping to get this one done soon-ish. I was going to have to try and get it done on a bit of a deadline because my parents were supposed to come and visit to see the baby and everything, but then that didn't end up working out because I was going to knit this for my dad's birthday present, and his birthday was at the beginning of September. So now, since that visit didn't end up working out, it has worked out in my favor a little bit because it means that I don't have as much of a deadline. His birthday has already happened, so I'll just get it done when I can and then just mail it off to him. But that's project number 2. Project number 3 is actually also the last project I have to talk about. And again, this one was not cast on when I was filming my last episode, but I have, I discovered this year Hannah of Hannah G Knits. She has a knitting podcast, and she also designs some beautiful children's knitting patterns. I absolutely love them. So I found her podcast this year and discovered her as a designer, and I've been able to test knit for her. So I recently test knit the Ollie's Classic Crew, which is just a beautiful, simple little children's pattern, sweater pattern. And then I am in the process of test knitting her another sweater pattern. I think it's her 3rd children's sweater pattern, and it is the Snow Globe sweater pattern, and it is so cute. I took way too long to decide on what colors I wanted to use for this, so I actually ended up taking much too long to cast it on. I only have about a week and a half, 2 weeks left before the deadline of the test knit, so I need to get a wiggle on. But to be fair, I did also expect to have a little bit more knitting time than I have, but that's still on me. Anyway, so it is this beautiful sweater with a colorwork yoke portion. And part of the reason why this has taken me so long is just because this is my first time doing proper, like, actual stranded color work, and it took me so much longer than I thought it would. Also, again, apologies if the light keeps changing. It keeps reflecting off of the cars outside, and so I can't tell if it's super blowing it out or not. Anyway, so I've never done like proper stranded color work. I've done like sort of simple color work where it's like a 1x1 color work sort of a thing, but never like a full-on stranded color work. And so it's been a little bit of a learning curve, like not too bad, but I'm very paranoid that I'm gonna have my floats too tight, because I feel like that's something that everybody talks about is, you know, make sure you have the right amount of tension and stuff in your color work, because otherwise it'll be way too tight, blah blah blah. So I was knitting a lot slower because I would stop and like stretch out all of my stitches and really like try and make sure my floats were long enough, which, to be fair, it seems like I did a pretty good job, because I do have a decent amount of stretch in here, but also my floats look quite tidy, I think. Again, this is my first color work project, so I think it looks fine. But yeah, so it took a bit of an adjustment to figure out how to do the color work, and it was a little slow. So it took me longer than I thought it would to do that portion. And I knew as soon as I got past that, it's just stocking it in the round, so it was going to fly off the needles, which it has. Like, honestly, this portion has just zipped through. I think I'm just about, I need to remeasure it, because when I filmed it yesterday, I had about 1 inch left to go, but then baby Tam took a nap, so I was able to knit a little bit more on it. And I think I'm right about at the right measurement to where I can do the ribbing. But yeah, here we go. This is what the color work looks like. I think it looks so cool. This is also my first time doing proper baubles, which are really interesting looking. I think they look so, so cute. And I'm very pleased with my color choices. I think that it looks excellent. I love it. So both of these are my hand-dyed yarn. This is a kind of a warm gray on a DK weight base, and then the navy is actually it's 2 fingering weight strands held together, and one of them is on a tweed base, which is really cool, because then in the color work, like, you can kind of see it in some of these baubles. There's like the little pops of tweed flecks, which I think is so cool. Yeah. I think it just looks so interesting. So I did have a realization yesterday. I was working away on the body, and I was like, there's not that much of this gray yarn left. I hope I have enough to finish up this sweater. I should have enough, you know, like, surely, yeah, I should have plenty. Then I went back and double checked the yarn requirements from the pattern and realized that I had underestimated how much yarn I would need. I thought I would only need 1 skein of the main colorway. I would need 2. So I messed up, but it's fine, because I realized what I can do is I can actually use my contrast color to do the ribbing and everything. So I'll do a ribbing at the bottom in this navy, and then on the neck, and then the cuffs for the sleeves. So then all I will really need this for is just the 2 sleeves, and I think I should be okay. I am crossing my fingers and hoping. Because all of my yarn dyeing stuff is kind of tucked away in a closet. I was going to say cabinet, but in a closet under the stairs, and it's not the most convenient thing to get out. In order to dye this and some other yarn, I had to have it out on my dining room table for like 3 days, so it kind of just looks messy and all over the place, and again, with the baby, it's a little difficult to do, but so it would be a real hassle to try and dye up another skein of yarn. I wrote down the recipe for it so I could, but I figured that this is also a really good way to help use up some stash yarn, because this is some of my hand-dyed yarn that I dyed up years ago, and it's just been sitting there, and I would love to use up more of it. So I think that it'll also look really cool because it'll kind of complement the color work in it. Yeah, I'm really excited to see how it is going to turn out. But yeah, I think that is about all I have to say about this. This is the second size in the pattern, which is like a maybe 3 months to a year pattern size. I don't remember exactly, but it's the second size in the pattern. To be fair, it is Baby Tan is a wee little fellow, and it is going to be some time before he is able to fit into this, I feel. But it's going to be so cute when he can. So this is my primary project because it is a test knit. I want to get it done. But I'm also really enjoying it. So there's that. Like I said, it is going to be a little bit on the shorter side today because that is all the knitting stuff that I have. But I thought that, like I said, it would be fun to talk about a couple of knitting podcasts that I would recommend. And I believe I mentioned in the last episode that I have been dyeing up some yarn. So I'm going to kind of talk about some of my plans for some of the yarn that I dyed. First off, knitting podcast. So I have, let me think, which ones have I been watching recently? Obviously the Crafty podcast. I believe I've talked about this so many times before. Rebecca of Crafty podcast. I love her podcast so much, and she just put out another video where she's talking about like some of her fall sweater knitting plans, which was just super inspiring. Makes me want to knit all of the sweaters. So if you haven't watched her podcast yet, I highly recommend that one. Let me see. Amanda of the Crafting Sparrow just put out another podcast episode. She only does hers about once a month, so I was super happy to see that she had, oops, dropping yarn, that she had published another one. And then, let me see, Erica of Stitching Your Own Adventure, she has a relatively new knitting podcast, and she's just so lovely to watch. Hers are pretty short, and she has all of these crocheted blankets that she's made, and she just finished knitting a spring sorrel sweater top, which is the pattern by, I believe it's Wool and Pine Designs, and it looks stunning. It looks so good. I've wanted to knit that pattern for quite some time, but yeah, the pattern's a little bit expensive, and so I have to kind of wait until I can afford it. And then I realized too that it would probably be better to wait until I'm in a place to like properly cast it on. So that's another one that I've really been enjoying. And then let me think. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that has recently published an episode. I can't think of any off the top of my head. The other YouTubers that I very much enjoy that are not knitting podcasters is Darling Desi. If you haven't seen her videos, oh, they're so good. She recently did one where it was talking about like autumn. She's doing all of her autumn themed videos, and it's making me want to like decorate my house and be super autumnal. So I really highly recommend you check out her channel if you like books and kind of cottagecore and cozy and all those sorts of vibes. Her channel is amazing. Yeah, so I think that's all the YouTube channels that I'm going to recommend. I did also remember that I almost forgot that I got some acquisitions while we were in Wisconsin. So in a minute I'll run and get those. But really quick, let's talk about the yarn that I dyed and my plans for it. So this one, like I showed you, is a fingering weight base. It's got, all of these are on a 75/25 superwash merino nylon base. Some of them are fingering, some of them are DK weight. But this one I'm thinking I have to check the yardage amounts and whatnot, but I might try and knit the Cargill sweater, which is a pattern designed by Rebecca of Crafty, and it's coming out at the end of September, on like September 30th. I am so excited for that pattern. I tried to test knit it, but I didn't quite get in, so I have to buy it and knit it immediately. I don't know if I have enough of this because, again, it's a fingering weight, so I'd have to hold it double, and I only have 4 skeins, so I need to check the yardages. And if I don't have enough, then I will probably try and do a one of the other patterns in my Ravelry library. I was thinking about potentially doing the LYS cardigan, which is a pattern by Andrea Mowry, and it's just this really classic, like, kind of fitted cardigan with some lace detailing down the front, and I think it would look really good in this, and it would fit really well in my wardrobe. I have a lot of blue things, and so this would look really good. There's that one. This one is another alternative for the cargo sweater. It's kind of a variegated navy with like light patches of light blue and then pops of green and yellow speckles. And I have 6 skeins of this, so I'm pretty sure I would have enough. But again, I have to check the yardages. If I don't do the Cargill, I might do the Birch Pullover by Andrea Mowry. I've wanted to do that one for a while, so I'm pretty sure I double checked to make sure that I dyed up enough that I could do that one. So there's this one. This one I'm very excited about. It is this beautiful kind of neutral variegated with like pops of this gray in there. When I first dyed it and pulled it out of the dye pots, I was like, ooh, I don't know that I like this. I don't know if it turned out the way that I wanted it to. I was going to call it the Sandpiper colorway, and at first I was just like, I don't know if it's right. Or the Sandpiper or Piping Plover. I can't remember which one. It's a bird. And then it dried, and I'm just in love with it. It's almost got a pinky hue to it. It's like a pinky beige with like pops of this gray, and I think it's going to be such a lovely cardigan. And I dyed it up with the intent to knit the Winter's Beach cardigan by Andrea Mowry, which is this lovely like cable design with pockets on it. It looks so classic, and I think it would go with so many things in my wardrobe. But yeah, I love how it turned out, and I have 6 skeins of this one. And then the last one, I like it. I'm not as sold on it. It's coming up much oranger on screen. It's more on the bright, like, pale yellow. Yeah, I wish it was that color, but it's a much, like, it's a bit paler. But it's just a tonal yellowy color. And I think it would make a lovely cargo sweater. Something textured, or I can't remember what the name of it was, but Caitlin Hunter just released a new pattern, and I bought it immediately. I love it. It's kind of textured all over, and it just looks so good. And I think it starts with, it's like bramble, I think, and I think that would look pretty good in this one. And then she has like some embroidery detailing that you can do on the back, which I think would be super cool. So that's a possibility for this one. I'm not 100% sure. But let me go and grab the yarn acquisitions that I got when we were in Wisconsin. We went to this lovely little yarn shop. It was called the Flax and Fleece, and I believe it was in like Sauk City, Wisconsin. And the lady in there, I didn't catch her name when we were there, but I went and looked on the website later, and I think it was Erica. She was super nice. She was just chit-chatting with my husband while I was walking around looking at all the yarn, and she was telling us about like her family and the school that her kids were going to, and she was wearing this beautiful, beautiful like crocheted sweater top thing. And I always feel like kind of shy and awkward in person, so I didn't ask her what the pattern was, but I fell in love with it. It looked so good. It was like gray, and then it had like a bee on the front of it, and it looked amazing. So I went on Ravelry and did some Ravelry searches, and I found a pattern, so I'll pop it up here and link it down below. I believe it's like the Bumble Top or something by Haley Bailey, and it's crocheted, and it looks so good. Most of the time with crocheted stuff, I don't like crocheted garments. I love how crocheted blankets look, but a lot of crocheted garments just, I don't know, they're not my thing. But this one looks so good, and Haley Bailey has a couple of other tops that I really want to knit. She's got one that's got like the monarch butterfly on it, and one that has another like moth on it. Oh, I love them so much. And then she has a blanket that has Luna moths on it, and they look so good. So I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna try and make one of those at some point here in the near future, but we'll see. I think it'll be a lot easier to do as far as like the color work portion of it with crochet than it is with knitting, and I think it'd be really fascinating to try and do it. And I think the reason why I like it is because it's knit out of fingering weight yarns on a relatively small gauge, or if it's not fingering weight yarns, it's like a more solid fabric, and it just looks so good. But let me go get the purchases that I got from that store, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have not actually made any purchases in a proper yarn store for ages. It's been so long. We're talking probably like 3+ years. It's been a long time. I just find that a lot of times with independent yarn stores, like local yarn stores and stuff, the prices are higher, and I have a pretty limited budget when it comes to crafting things, and so I will try and get my yarn off of like Love Crafts, where it's usually a bit cheaper. I would love to be in the position to be able to just support the local yarn stores all the time, but that's just not where I am in life right now. And the other part of it too was I didn't realize until recently, I thought that the only local yarn store that was close by was one that's about an hour away. It's like an hour drive away. But then I found out recently that there's actually one that's like 15 minutes away, and it is my intent to go there and make some yarn purchases, because I've just been looking at their selection online, and they have so many beautiful things online, things that I would love to purchase. And so at some point I'm gonna go there, but it just hasn't happened yet. And then I had a baby, so that's kind of delayed things even more so. But I knew that when we were going up to Wisconsin, I knew that I wanted to try and go to a yarn store and get kind of some souvenir yarns to make some things for my husband and my baby, and see if there was something that I wanted to get for me. So I ended up making a purchase for each one of us. So we'll talk about mine first. And put this bag down so I don't crinkle the whole time. I was super pumped to find out that they had the Leica needles, and they were clearancing them out. So they were on like a super sale, which made me so excited, because I was able to get 3 pairs for the same price as 1 pair. They were all about $4 a piece, and typically when I've been looking online, they're about like $10 to $15 per needle. And so I've wanted to try these for such a long time and just see what I think about them, because I didn't really want to invest in a whole like interchangeable set or anything like that. To be honest, it'll probably be a very long time before I'm able to invest in an interchangeable needle set, just because of how expensive they are. But I wanted to try them out. So I was able to get them. I got a US size 1, 1.5, and 2, or 2.25 millimeter, 2.5 millimeter, and 2.75 millimeter, and they're all on 32-inch cords, because I wanted to make sure they were long enough that I could do magic loop. Also, there was a fairly limited selection of needles, because again, they were on clearance, so they were pretty much entirely sold out of that like sweet spot middle range of like the US size 3 through like 7, 8, like pretty much all of those were gone. So that's why I ended up going with these ones, because I would like to knit some socks, and I can do that with the US size 1. And then sometimes with colorwork socks and stuff, you need a 1.5 or a 2, and I just haven't had those in my stash at all. And so I'm super happy to have these and to try them out, and I will report back what I think on them. But I need to finish the socks that I have on the needles now, because I don't want to switch needles partway through. But I'm so happy to have these, and if I had had more money, I would have bought so many more of them, but I didn't. So I've got these. And then the next thing that I purchased was this skein of yarn to make a pair of socks for my husband. And is this not the most beautiful thing ever? I love this. So my husband really tends to wear very neutral colored socks. Like that's the thing, like dark blues, dark black, or dark blues, dark grays, and blacks, like those sorts of neutrals, because then he can wear them to work. But I realized with this one that from like far away, it just looks like a boring gray yarn. But then when you actually look at it, it has like this almost rainbow effect. If I could have afforded it, I would have bought a sweater's quantity of this because it would make the most stunning sweater ever. But at $22 a piece, that's a lot of money to put down for a sweater. It probably would have been like $80 or $90 to get a sweater's quantity. And this is from the Fiber Co. It's the Amble base, which is a blend of merino wool, alpaca, and nylon. So it has 70% wool, 20% alpaca, and 10% nylon. And it's classified as a fingering, but this is, I don't know, this seems like it's closer to like a sport weight almost, or in between a sport and a fingering, because it's got 355 yards per 100 grams, and I'm used to fingering weight yarns being in like the 400 yard plus range, so I think that this is kind of in between, but it'll still make a absolutely lovely pair of socks. Yeah, there's a label. Ooh, there we go. I love this so much. I wish I could have a sweater out of it because it's beautiful. I love, if you're not familiar with the terrazzo patterns, where it's basically just a plain background with like the flecks of color in it, I love that pattern. But a lot of times terrazzo stuff is with a white or a cream background, and I just don't like those kind of light colors on me. And then I also love like kind of the confetti look, where it's like, again, a light background with like pops of color. Someday I'm going to have a sweater that is going to be like a gray background with those bright pops of color. I am like determined. But I feel like this is kind of in the same vein because it's kind of a dark neutral with the pops of color. So I really, really love it, and I cannot wait to be able to work with it because I think it's going to be such fun. And honestly, there's probably enough yarn here to make us both a pair of socks. So we'll see. And then the last thing I purchased was I bought this big ball of yarn to make my baby a sweater. And it is the Sirdar Jewel Spun. It's 100% acrylic, so it's going to be super easy to wash and care for. And it has 546 yards for 200 grams, so it's classified as an errand weight. And it's just this blends of greens, teals, browns, grays, beige. I think it's going to make the most beautiful sweater. It's going to be adorable. And I was planning to make the Micah's Raglan pattern by Hannah of Hannah G Knits. And that one, it calls for a DK weight yarn, but I can either go a size down, or if it ends up a little bit bigger. That's the beauty about knitting for kids, is that if it ends up too big, they're growing. Like, they will fit it at some point. So that's my plan to do with this. And I also saw there, I believe it was Sirdar Hayfield or something. There were these giant balls of, or skeins, hanks, whatever you want to call them, things of yarn. They had almost 1,000 yards per one of them, and they were an acrylic and wool blend, so it was super economical. I think it was like $25 for one of those, and I'm pretty sure you could get a sweater out of one of those, which is such a good deal. And I was able to find a very similar, if not the same, yarn off of Love Crafts. So at some point I want to buy one and try it out and see what I think of it, because they had some beautiful colors. There was one that had like a green olivey background, but it was like a tweed base, and so it had these like colorful tweedy flecks. I almost got it because that would make the most beautiful sweater ever. Like, it would just be amazing. And I looked online, and on Love Crafts there was one that I found. I think it was a different brand, but it was the same makeup. So it was the 80% acrylic, 20% wool, and it was a gray with like pops of color. So at some point, I'm kind of hoping around Black Friday that Love Crafts will have some sales, and I'll be able to like pick some up for a discounted amount. Yeah. So that is all that I have for you today. I know there was a bit of a different one. There wasn't as much in the knitting content, so to speak, but I'm hoping over the next couple of weeks to be able to squeeze in a little more knitting time. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but who knows? Yeah, so thank you so much for hanging out and spending some time with me today. It was lovely to get back to filming again. I've kind of missed it. I've been trying to squeeze in some other videos. I put up a knit and chat video, but I just haven't had time to knit things, which means that I don't have things really to talk about in a podcast. But I have some plans for some other videos that I'm going to be making. I'm in the process of making a video talking about the process of making the snow globe sweater, and I have some plans for some other fun, like shorter videos to kind of put up in between podcast episodes, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, that's all that I've got for you today. I need to go and rescue my husband from a fussy baby. So thank you so much for hanging out with me and supporting this channel. I hope that you're all doing very well, and I will see you as soon as I can on the next one. Bye.